Great. With that, I'll call the regular meeting of Township Council for Monday, October 7th to order. Of course, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular, acknowledge our valued relationships with the Katzie, Kwantlen, Natsquit, and Semiahmoo First Nations. Before we get underway with today's agenda, we have some special guests here to the Township of Langley from a delegation from Gwanyan, from the Republic of Korea. Council, I had a chance to meet with them earlier today, as did Council, and it's a great initiative that Council is going to considering expanding and deepening in the months ahead. Gwanyan is located in the center of southern coast of the Korean Peninsula, a young and dynamic city with a population of about 150,000 people, maybe 155,000 people now. Very similar in population size to the Township of Langley. It is designated as Korea's free economic zone. It is home to POSCO Gwanyan Steelworks, the world's largest single steel plant complex. And the Gwanyan International Port is known for its significant volume of imports and exports. It is also solidifying its position as a central hub for the global secondary battery material industry, covering everything from anode materials to cathode materials. And I had a chance to glance at this interesting book, because I think we might have to look at one of these for the Township of Langley. And it also said here again, the world's largest steelworks, international container port, gigantic chemical industrial complex, and offshore suspension bridge harmonize with the coastal waters of the Gwanyan Bay and the lights of the city, creating a city view brimming with hope. Very interesting to read this, and again, thank you very much for bringing me a copy of this here today. We have Vice Mayor Gi-Yeon Kim, Councillor Yong-Hyun An here today as well, and I apologize, I'm working hard on the pronunciations, but I know we're going to perfect those over the coming year. And Yoon Sung-ji, is that correct? Yep. It was wonderful to meet here earlier today. And Vice Mayor, Councillor, and the Director of Steel in the Port Division. Manager of International Cooperation Team, Hyun Ok, also here with us today. Assistant Manager of International Cooperation Team, Yeon Jo Soo. Did I get that correct? Get that correct? Yes. And their delegation is spending 3 days here in the Township of Langley, and after this here today, going to visit the Langley Events Center and the Walnut Grove Recreation Center. This was first brought to my attention by former Councillor Blair Whitmarsh, who again thank very much for presenting this with here today. I know it's met with you in your city in Korea and brought this to our attention to potentially look at developing a partnership here in the future, and I thank him very much for that. And we'll now do a short gift exchange between council, delegation, and a chance to get a photo before you head up to the Langley Events Center. And again, thank you for coming here today, meeting with myself and all of council that was able to make it to our lunch. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll get back underway. Get a motion to adopt the agenda items for October 7th here today. Moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Call the question on A1. Any discussion? Nope. Call the question on A1. That carries unanimously. Get a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting from September 23rd. Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, call the question on B1. That carries unanimously. Get a motion to adopt the public hearing meeting minutes from September 23rd. Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Call the question on B2. That carries unanimously. Coming on to item E1, Agricultural Land Commission application number 100459. Does anybody wish to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on E1? None. Call a question on E1. That carries unanimously. Item E2, proposed 2025 council calendar. Moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on E2? Seeing none, call a question on E2. That carries unanimously. Item E3, Mass Timber Demonstration Program. I'll move it. That's seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on E3? Seeing none, call a question on E3. Oh, Councillor Richter.
Are we voting on E3? I just have to declare conflict on E4. That's
E4. Okay, so we'll just didn't know if you wanted to speak on E3, so we'll clear the queue, go back to that, call the question on E3. That carries unanimously. Item E4. Does anybody wish to declare a conflict? Councillor Richter, okay. Anyone else? No. Okay, I'll move the recommendations. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion? Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, it's. I know that Seniors Committee over a number of years has been looking at green burials, and it's something that I'm sure many of them, as the regular folk in Langley, will be happy to hear this. And I want to thank yourself and staff for moving ahead with this item. It's an important item for many people in the community. Thank you.
I thought you were going to speak a bit longer, Councillor Ferguson. That's great. I also appreciate this advancing, seeing this come back as quickly. A number of people have met with me and requested this, and it's great to see this becoming a new option in the Township of Langley. Any other question? Call the question on E4. That carries unanimously with Councillor Richter absent. Could we get Councillor Richter back, please? So, Councillor Rent, go ahead.
I have to call a conflict on G1.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll move forward with G1. There's quite a few motions here. I'll move the recommendation in the agenda, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. I do have a series of minor amendments, but we can go through speakers first. Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. I just wanted to ask some simple questions for staff. Simple first question. Number one, will people be able to pay on their online banking and things like that through this new system, if I may?
For business licensing, we'll be able to pay through online banking, I presume. Yeah.
That's what I meant from there. And also any other permits and things like that could go through the normal channels, but they could be paid through the banking system as well?
That's my understanding.
Because so I know there's a number of changes, positive changes I see in here. I'm going to wait for the mayor if he's got some changes. And I might have some changes as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, I had a question. And I was trying to figure it out here, but maybe staff can answer. If a winery would like to expand the hours and there's no change to the site that would require a development permit, would there still be a need for a report? Or with the new bylaws, would that include waiving the need for a staff report if one has already been done?
Mr. Cooner?
Through your worship to Councillor Kunst, there would be no waiving of the staff report. It would be delegated to staff. That's we're proposing a streamline and amendments to the development procedure bylaw.
Okay, and will there be a opportunity for the public to weigh in on these?
I believe
Or-
that's a required part of the process, but
Is it? Okay.
Mr. Cooner can confirm.
Through your worship to Councillor Kunst, actually, I'll just seek some clarification. Are you more specifically talking about the question you posed or the licensing item? Because under the licensing item, the community charter requires us to provide an opportunity for public input.
Okay, yeah, as long as the people who are impacted by this get a chance to sort of say if this is going to be helpful or not, I think that's important. So if there is that, if they're going to have that opportunity, that would be great.
Let's get that clarified in case it comes up again here. In the first recommendation, resolution, authorize staff to schedule the required public input opportunity to pursuant to applicable regulations. Mr. Cooner, do you have any specifics on what form that required public input opportunity is going to take?
Your worship, the notice requirements, I believe, will be mailed out this week. Prior to this item coming forward for final adoption, there'll be an opportunity for the public to provide written submissions to council prior to council considering final adoption of this bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Martins?
Yep, thank you. I had a question, if I may, through the chair to staff. When I'm looking at the report, item number 5 on page 5 talks about provincial and or federal approvals. Here we're looking at a number of businesses that are also regulated provincially or federally, such as daycares, liquor, primary, restaurants, personal services, medical, and cannabis retail and production. And I see that staff consulted with legal counsel on the township's obligation to obtain these approvals prior to the issuance of a business license. And I've highlighted the next sentence. Legal counsel has confirmed that the township is likely not obligated to obtain such approvals, but can include a requirement that these approvals be obtained as a condition of obtaining a business license, if expressly set out in the licensing bylaw. But the further language in this paragraph suggests that we are not going to do that, other than to take away, we'll provide a disclaimer to confirm that the licensee is still required to comply, but basically it's not our responsibility. So the way this could play out is there could be somebody on the community that gets a business license for a liquor primary or some other business that is regulated by higher levels of government without having their passed through those levels of government. And then if we have people complaining about said business because they are they're creating alcohol and selling it or serving it, and they don't have any licensing from the province under the Liquor Act, who's responsible for that? Because typically our bylaw people are involved with businesses operating illegally and that sort of thing. I worry that we're creating more work for a bylaw enforcement that's actually, again, a different level of government. Why wouldn't we just wait till they have all of those approvals in place before we then give them a business license?
So I let you finish, but that is unfortunately not correct. So let's have Mr. Assessor, let's have that clarified exactly what is occurring and for which business types that's going to be required and which that it isn't.
Thank you. So for business licensing, currently we will ask for provincial certification for liquor, primary, health, for restaurants and so forth, and personal services, certification for registered massage therapists to that end. Proposing the new bylaw, we would not request those for the business licenses. So it would be up to the business license holder. It would be their requirements to get them.
But which categories is that requirement going to remain?
For daycare, assisted living facilities, liquor primary would be done through the liquor primary, their initial, through development services with their initial liquor primary application. So for business licenses, we would ask for community care such as assisted living and daycares.
So it would be incorrect to say that it's applying to all business licenses. It's a reduction in the categories of which that process will be undertaken. I think it would be inaccurate to say that it's not doing it anymore. It'd be more accurate to say you're reducing the quantity of categories for which you're doing that. And I believe that when I met with you on it, the logic for this may be that people get caught in two bureaucracies, each expecting the other to have an approval prior to them issuing an approval. And you see this on occasion where Fraser Health is requiring a business license prior to considering, and I'm simplifying it, but you end up with two bureaucracies expecting the other to approve it first, and business owners running back and forth between the two bureaucracies. And I believe this council is showing great leadership in resolving that situation and letting the provincial government do what it's responsible for, and letting the local government assist with that, but also making sure that small business owners are not caught in that kind of a situation. Councillor Martins?
Yeah, thank you. So I actually it wasn't incorrect, because it only is daycares and supportive living that won't require, or that are required to have the provincial requirements in place first. Is that right?
Prior to us issuing a
Right,
business
so
license,
liquor,
yes.
cannabis, those sorts of businesses won't be required.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. And that is my concern. I understand if there's confusion over who authorizes it first, and maybe we need some clarification about that. But I am not comfortable with us removing the requirement for them to be, to receive those approvals. To me, it's like the development permit process. We authorize it subject to certain conditions, and that would be meeting the provincial requirements. And it sounds like we are just canceling that out. Why wouldn't we have a subject to clause in there to ensure, to cover us off, that businesses in our community are operating that have all the proper requirements in place? And that is my question. It's not about me trying to slow things down or create red tape. I'm all for efficiencies, and if there's better ways to do things, that's great. I just worry we're going to put ourselves in a situation where people are going to be questioning why we approved a business license on something that's an illegal operation. That's my comment on that.
Okay, so how would you define an illegal operation? Because I believe you covered this off with legal counsel sufficiently to confirm that the responsibility of Fraser Health is the responsibility of Fraser Health, and that you're going to be notifying Fraser Health of the existence of the business license for them to follow up in the case of food primary or liquor primary establishments. So I think that's grossly exaggeration and a gross misrepresentation of what's occurring here, and what is a pretty fabulous reform. And yeah, if you're opposed to red tape, then you vote to remove red tape. And so I think what's happening here is we're seeing that we've seen in the past that there's the expectation that Township of Langley is going to require Fraser Health and other levels of government to approve a business, and that before a business license will be issued, and you're caught in this dilemma. And so I think it's important to note that you'll be also notifying other levels of government of the existence of the business for them to follow up and ensure that they have a liquor license, that they have other Fraser Health requirements in place, that they have hand washing sinks and so on, other things like that. And I think that that's been missed in the commentary so far. Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yes, I was approached by a business owner, Liquor Primary, and it is concerning something as simple. They've already got a business license and all that, and they're looking at changing the hours, and they have to go through this incredibly complex procedure to change those hours. Does this fix it?
I'll defer that to Mr. Richardson.
I'll take that question. Through your worship to Councillor Bailey, the policy itself, the liquor licensing council policy, is now being rescinded and being put into the development procedure bylaw. And within that, there's the changes being proposed are to have delegations to staff to hopefully streamline the process, but the process itself is going to remain that you are referring to. And I'll just use this opportunity to clarify an item. This may hopefully answer the question. So with liquor primary, or if the application for liquor licenses goes through the provincial liquor control and licensing branch, and then there's an opportunity for the Township of Langley to provide its comments and to ensure that there's a liquor license at a provincial level. The business license itself will be a separate item than the liquor licensing, very similar to cannabis. Cannabis stores will have to go through the Provincial Liquor Control and Licensing Branch, and it will come before Township of Langley as well through our liquor licensing, but now the new procedure. That would be a separate item, and then they would have to obtain a business license as well. Within the business license, we're just ensuring a disclaimer and highlighting to individuals that these are not our obligations nor our jurisdiction to obtain different levels of government approvals.
Yeah, because to me, it just seems like if you've already got a business license in that area and that kind of stuff, and all you want to do is an extension of hours, it seems like an incredibly complex procedure to go through just to make sure you can stay open a little longer. So I'm really hoping that this can get dealt with in a way that helps business owners.
I think that's the key here. Appreciate that. I think it's also important to highlight that allowing multi-year business licenses for small business with a discount is going to reduce a lot of overhead and staff processing time. Could you talk a bit about that, please? Which would lead me to following up on the discussion we just had. So you can confirm that what's going to happen is that it's going to be January 1st is going to be the date, and that people will have the option to prepay essentially for a multi-year business license, subject to there being no changes in the nature of the business?
Yes, that's correct. They can opt for a 2, 3, 5, or 10-year multi-year license. They would essentially pay the discounted rate in advance, and they would get a new license every year. However, they would have to do nothing to get that. They would essentially be licensed for whatever year that they chose to do. Mm-hmm. And after the time frame, they can reapply after their 2, 5, or 10-year license. And then you're expired. Annualizing all the renewal dates for all licenses to January 1st. Could you explain maybe the benefits of that? Yeah, so our existing system is an anniversary-based system where we need to invoice and send reminders monthly. And reporting structures are very difficult with an anniversary-based system. So we've proposed to move to an annual system, which is January to December. It means that we need to invoice and send reminders out only once per year. So it will create a lot more time for staff. And it also helps our reporting structure. Yeah. And so if you want to offer small business where maybe you don't see a lot of changes over a number of years, and they're returning to the counter and they're renewing these business licenses with no changes to the address, no changes to the business size, no changes to the location, no changes to the configuration of the unit. And I think what is a very positive reform, I think you mentioned it might be the first in Canada to allow for multi-year simplistic business licenses within a set number of categories to assist with small business. And how would you offer a multi-year business license from the township if you were required to confirm other levels of government had granted approval when their licenses potentially expire on an annual basis? That's a good question. You wouldn't be able to do the program at all, would you? Yeah, not necessarily. That's great. So thank you very much for confirming that you wouldn't be able to do the program at all. Thank you. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I think there are some good ideas in this report, but there are some that leave me with concern. Councillor Martin certainly identified one of them. And I'm wondering, it refers here, as was mentioned on page 5, to legal opinion. Could council please get a copy of the legal opinion before final is given? Is that possible?
I don't view that as an issue. That can be provided to council in a memo.
Okay, thank you. And the concern I have around this is we've had issues in the past and continue to have issues in the past of people buying up properties, particularly in the South Langley area, and then converting barns or riding rings or whatever into banquet and wedding facilities. So how does this prevent that from happening? Because it seems to me that it's removing any kind of check and balance that we might have over something like that.
I believe that would be covered by different regulations, Mr. Kinner.
Yes, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to Councillor Richter. Essentially, we have that liquor licensing policy there. We're just rescinding that policy, putting it in the development application procedure, but the requirements there have not been changed. It's just streamlining the process there. What is being referred to is in relation to ALC regulation that states how many events you're allowed per year. And I believe off the top of my head, it's 10 events per year. It's a different jurisdiction. And if there's any concerns or breaches in the ALC regulation, that's referred to the ALC officer for the region. But if there's any breaches in the zoning bylaw, then the bylaw enforcement department will be seeking compliance from the owner if there's any concerns in that. However, there has been certain property owners who are not obeying by some of the zoning bylaws and proceeding with that.
Okay, perhaps the disclaimer that's included and referred to needs to be very strongly worded, so we're not inviting people to take advantage of what could be perceived as a loophole.
That's duly noted, and we'll be seeking further advice from legal counsel.
Okay. The other question that I have is on page 6, which refers to the proposed delegation or the proposed requirement for a council resolution that three councillors must have, or I'm not even sure how to read that. Is it 3 or more, or 3 councillors that need to require a council resolution, otherwise staff just automatically do it? How will council ever know that there's something that maybe we should be querying if it never ever comes to this table?
Mr. Cooner, maybe clarify if I'm wrong. This mirrors the reform earlier in the council term, the existing procedure in the council, the development application procedures bylaw for delegated permits for townhouses and other permit forms. So it's mirroring that process that already exists that provide emails to council. Is that correct?
That is correct. So there is emails to councils currently, and what we're proposing here is that when applications are received, members of council receive a notification, and 3 members of council, if they indicate in writing, so that can be in just an email, that an application be advanced to council within 14 days of them receiving notification, then that application will be advanced to council rather being delegated to staff.
Okay. I remain very concerned about that one as well. So I will vote to send this out because it is going to have public input. But I think before we give it final, we need to pay a little more attention to at least those 2 potential loopholes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer, I'm going to process some amendments now. If you could bring up the first amendment that I have to 4.37, please. I'd like to move that section 4.37 be amended to add at the end if alterations are proposed or if it appears that alterations have occurred. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Van Popte. So everybody bring up, I believe this is page 31, page 7 of the bylaw. Currently here, there's an item that to potentially request a detailed floor plan showing without limitation the dimensions and description of all uses of the business premises. I would like to have council consider that you add if alterations are proposed or if it appears that alterations have occurred, so that it's specific to when the unit appears to have been changed or is proposed to be changed, not for the discretion of any application. That's the logic for that amendment. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Not. Call the Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I'm just, where is this 4.37? Because when I look at the policy,
It's in the bylaw, Councillor Richter. Bylaw 5878, page 7. That's on page 31 of the report.
okay, thank you.
And I'm happy to give everybody a chance to read that full clause if they wish, but I can come back to you. Councillor Kunst?
So would this sort of help with the question that I had about if somebody wants to just extend their hours and they haven't done any changes to their establishment? So this basically is saying, well, the only time that maybe we would go further is if you've actually changed the, increased the amount of floor space and all that kind of stuff.
Through your worship to Councillor Kunst, no, not necessarily. This is more in particular with businesses or secondary suites. So if there's any changes in relation to a dental office, their floor space, it's the same, they would automatically renew rather than, or if there's concerns that they proposed any alterations, then they can request a detailed floor plan, not automatically is that requested. So the question you are asking is still in relation to the development application procedure bylaw where the liquor licensing aspect is.
Yeah,
So this is more in line with business and secondary suite.
okay.
All right, so seeing any other discussion, call a question on that amendment. That carries unanimously. Go back, open this up. Ms. Bauer, there's a second amendment to section 5.6. This was a housekeeping one. That section 5.6, licensing bylaw 5878, be amended to include a reference to a 2-year licenses. This was just a small minor item that just needs to be clarified. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on just adding a reference to one of the multi-year types that was omitted? Nope. Call a question on that amendment. That carries unanimously. Back to the third amendment, Ms. Bauer. Section 11.7 be amended to start with no business premises shall permit any person to. Is there a seconder to that? Even for discussion, seconded by Councillor Van Popte. Mr. Ciceretti, maybe you could explain to council what this amendment is for and why it's here. Might be easier.
Thank you, Your Worship. That amendment dealt with the Class A license that the Alder Inn held about exotic performances. And it's in section 11, there's a number of things that deal with adult publication, commercial passengers, drug paraphernalia. So that's just cleaning up some of the wording on that section on 11.7.
So it still maintains the restriction, but
Still
doesn't limit it to that one potential
Correct.
situation.
Still maintains the restriction because we've had, over the years, a couple of other establishments that tried to have topless waitresses and a couple other things that was dealt with in the business license bylaw.
Right. So that's the rationale for I think removing a legacy situation that no longer exists from the bylaw. Yeah, that's the rationale. Is there any discussion on that amendment? No, seeing none, I'll call the question on that amendment. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Ms. Bauer, you can bring up all of the business license fees amendments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as a group. You can just bring them all up simultaneously. I'm going to move them as one. Great, thank you. No, the other one you can. There we go. Thank you. So you can look at those. I will move those 5. I'll move that motion to all 5 simultaneously. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. So the first one is to add back financial institution category. The second one is to reduce for winery, cidery, and distillery. Third one is to alter the golf course category. Second is to consolidate the restaurant categories into one and average out the annual licensing fee. And the third is to cut the accessory home occupation category annual licensing fee by approximately 50%. Is there a second? Did we get a seconder, Ms. Bauer? We did, yes, Councillor Pratt. So is there any discussion on these fee amendments? Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
I'm just curious as to why in the second clause brewery wasn't included. Is that just because of the manufacturing nature in a more urban area?
Breweries traditionally have a manufacturing license.
Okay,
That's right.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Any other discussion on these adjustments? None. I'll call the question on those adjustments to G1. Oh, do you wish to speak to them, Councillor Kunst? No? Great. So those carry with Councillor Richter opposed. Then I have one other amendment, Ms. Bauer. that the annual secondary suite infrastructure fee be reduced in 2025 and in 2026 and in 2027 and in 2028. I'll move that. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Ferguson. This year, I think we would like to see, I'd like to propose to council that this come down to be one of the lowest ones in the region. Many municipalities don't have a secondary suite fee at all, and I think it's an ideological struggle for me a little bit, that if you have a secondary suite in your home, theoretically it is of higher value, and you have a higher assessed value, which results in a greater rate of property tax. Some could be considered additional taxation, which is already captured by BC assessment theoretically. I think it's important to also note that we have a family rate. Maybe you could also explain that to council, that the current rate for that is now going to be phased in back down to that roughly that amount by 2027 and 2028. I think that'd be important to highlight that we're getting this back down to where it is for some secondary suites already. Mr. Cesareni, go ahead.
Yeah, Your Worship. The family rate is currently at 175 and has been since the introduction of the secondary suite licenses. So these amendments would bring all those fees down to something comparable.
If there's any questions about that, now's the time. Councillor Richter?
So does that mean that the family fee will stay at 175, but anybody else who has a fee that their family isn't living in is going to pay less by 2028?
No, I think, through your worship to Councillor Richter, I believe with these changes, we would mirror those fees even to the family rate, like increase the family rate and then bring them down, unless council would like to do anything else on that.
Okay, but you said the family rate right now is 175.
That's correct, but...
And what would it go down to then?
Well, it would start for the following year, it would either stay at the 175, which we have been given no direction. The only direction we have is on this amendment. So all the licenses would be 295, and then over the years they'd work down, where in 2028 every license would be 145. Now that's unless council would like to do some kind of amendment or a motion to have the family rate stay as it is until 2028.
And I believe, what is the quantity of households that have filled out the significant amount of paperwork, from what I understand, to achieve that designation and that fee reduction?
Yes.
Maybe walk council through that,
Right.
and that the number of households that have that, and the significant amount of TAF time that is going in for that amount of households that have that.
Your worship, so we have approximately 1,000 family secondary suite licenses. They originally fill out a stat declaration, which basically says that they have a family member in the suite and that there's no exchange of monies. That stat dec stays on the license. Staff does not do yearly checks or confirm. Even now, we couldn't tell you what the percentages that are family rate, or who have family in their suites, or if over time their family members moved out and they've started renting them. So as of right now, for staff to do that would be quite a bit of work and lots of follow-up with people, trying to find out who lives in the suite. So I think moving away from the family rate is probably a good thing.
Yeah, and so council, if it were to adopt this reduction over a 4-year period, with the removal of different categories for different households, council could consider alternative mechanisms of helping with that transition down to the 195 and the 145, more consistent with what they pay now. I probably would have some proposals for council to address that in the 2025 budget process.
Correct, that would work.
As opposed to embedding it in the bylaw and having you continue that work, council could address it through the budget process to help with the transition to phasing this down for all of the community. Yeah, Councilor Richter, does that help?
Yeah, so why doesn't this amendment include phase out the family fee by in 2028? Because staff doesn't have any direction on it.
Maybe you could clarify that again, Mr.
Yeah.
Cesareni.
Through your worship to Councilor Richter, the family rate fee was being phased out because of the new fee and schedules bylaw, that would have the rate was at $3.50, everyone would have paid the $3.50 if this bylaw goes through.
Oh, okay. But now they're gonna stay at 175.
Well, now they're gonna mirror that. So the family rate will go up to $2.95 for 2025, and then be reduced, all the secondary suite fees will be $2.95, and then they'll be reduced as per the amendment,
If the amendment were to.
if the
proceed.
amendment were to go through.
And I believe, Councilor Richter, because I share the concern of helping with the process, I think it'd be appropriate for council to look at a transition subsidy that could be grandfathered in for some of these households for a few years while this gets closer to the amount they currently pay. And all of the staff overhead going into this paperwork would go away. And council could look at a transitionary period for those households and during the budget process that would basically backfill the bylaw revenue. And then the other solution potentially is something, also not solution, but the important thing is there's a phase-in period for this category of secondary suite in the water utility transition that's currently going on. Maybe you could outline that as well. The 1 year grace period that's outlined a bit in the report.
Correct, Your Worship. The family rate, they pay the $175 secondary suite fee, and then there is no utility fee, 30% additional water and sanitary fee. If this bylaw was to go through, the family secondary suites would end up paying the license fee plus the utility fee, though the report does say that we'll give a 1 year grace period before charging the utility fee on the family secondary suites, and give owners the opportunity to get a water meter installed, and then be a user pay system.
And this would be very consistent with what other municipalities are doing.
Correct.
Correct, yeah. Councilor Richter?
Are we allowed to amend an amendment?
No, that's not a part of the council procedure bylaw anymore.
Okay, well, I think there needs to be another amendment then, which I'm willing to put on, that the family fee remain at 175 until 2027, and that it be phased out in 2028.
Okay, we can certainly come back to that. Is there any other discussion on this particular amendment? Seeing none, call the question on this amendment to G1. That carries unanimously. Councilor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, that the annual family fee for a secondary suite remain at 175 until 2027 and be phased out in 2028.
So before that's seconded, Mr. Sesretti, maybe you could explain the complications that that's going to have for the other reforms within the bylaw, because that category was going to essentially disappear. Or would you grandfather, if this amendment were to go ahead, would you attribute that to the households that currently have that status, and how would you potentially administrate this?
Thanks, Your Worship. I think
Mr. Mayor, point of order, don't you need a seconder on a motion before you can discuss it?
I think it's appropriate to understand the implications of it before it's seconded. So go ahead.
No,
Mr.
that's not fair.
Either
you second it or you rule it out of order.
Councilor Richter, I'm going to ask the staff to answer the question. Go ahead and answer the question, please.
I think the best way to handle this would be to grandfather it until the 2028 comes into effect, and then their fees be reduced to 145
So great.
on the secondary suite. And the other thing that I do want to mention is that we have about 14 secondary suite licenses that are on compassionate grounds, and those are issued when there's a hardship where we have a family member who needs full-time care. So we've basically charged the 175, but no utility fee for them also, in order to show some compassion and to help the family deal with the situation that they're in.
But those also do not have a follow-up or verification process.
Correct.
So that's a one-time, and then it's currently not followed up on from there on.
Correct. And then when it's no longer required, the expectation is they contact us.
Yeah,
But
so Councilor Richter, if you wish to move that, get that seconded, go ahead.
Yes, okay, so I'm moving that the annual secondary fee for families and compassionate be grandfathered until 2027 and then removed in 2028?
Is there a seconder to that?
Just a clarification point. I think
go ahead.
2028 was the intent, correct? Not 2027? Because the fees would come down to 145 in 2028.
I know.
Do you wish to
Oh,
charge them
okay,
more
yeah.
than?
Through
Yeah.
2027 and be removed in 2028, yes.
Yeah. So great. Is there a seconder to that? So that's seconded. Do you wish to speak to it any further, Councilor Richter?
Well, I really do think that there's a need for both a family fee as well as a compassionate fee. And if we want to level the playing field, then we do it in 2028, when the fee is at 145 for everybody.
That's certainly one option. Councilor Martins?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I seconded this motion because I'm still sufficiently confused. Is if this is required, an amendment is actually required to provide a grandfathering rate for people who are paying the family rate, or is that already included in this policy? Because I don't think it's fair for people who have the family rate to go backwards. So that's all. I'm just trying to get some clarification on if this is necessary or if we can go ahead and grandfather them. So I don't know who needs to answer that.
yeah, Your Worship, through to Councillor Martins, the bylaw was eliminating the family rate. The proposed bylaw would eliminate the family rate, bring all the rates up to the 350. And so if you want to if council wishes to keep a family rate, then they would have to do an amendment, and the way I see it. Because right now the proposed bylaw eliminates that family rate. Everyone goes to 350. And the only thing that is that the family license has is a 1 year grace period before the utilities start to be charged on them, similar to the other licenses.
Okay, and I heard mention of it's an administrative burden doing this. Could you speak a little more to if we were to provide the grandfathering for the family rate till I guess essentially catches up with this reduction? What is the burden for staff having to administrate that?
Sure. Your Worship, Councillor Martins. So as I mentioned, we take a statutory deck that's notarized, basically saying, I, the owner, guarantee that no money is being taken, and my son and wife will be living in the suite. Staff does no follow-up on that. Each year, when the payment's made, the license is issued. If staff were to have to confirm that, I'm not exactly sure how we would do that, except by knocking on the door and asking for proof that you're actually related to the owner of the house and being upstairs. The number of licenses, it just creates a little bit of hard time for staff to confirm this. So that's why we've basically taken their word for it, trusted them at their word, and moved forward with a license each year.
Right, and I'm sorry, I believe you mentioned it already. How many licenses do
We have close to 1,000.
Of how many in total?
4,100.
4,100, so about 25% of them are at the family rate?
Yeah, correct. But at this time, like I mentioned before, we don't know now what percentage of that 1,000 is still family occupied or non-family occupied.
Okay, so if I'm trying to do some quick mental math, so they're currently paying $175?
Right, and no utilities.
And no, but the utilities is being handled separately. Is that right? That's another piece. This is just for the
Correct.
the fee. Okay, so they're currently paying 50%. So can someone do the math for me? And how much money are we talking about? That if we were to just allow it till it takes over in 2028, how much revenue are we? I'm just thinking, is it worth the administrative burden for the amount of money we're talking about? I mean, if they've already provided their stat deck. It just seems strange to me that we're going backwards for people who who have claimed a family rate, and we're going to charge them double for now. Like, is there any idea what the savings is for us?
Through your worship, no.
No.
Unless, yeah, we don't have that number. We could get that number.
Okay. All right. So I'm not comfortable, people with the, what is it, you said 25% of the suites having to pay twice as much for their fee, in the interest of, you know, streamlining. Let's just leave it, grandfather it, let them until they catch up in 2028, and then we can just roll that out. I mean, I don't know, like, maybe I don't know if I'm missing something here. I'm just not understanding why, other than the administrative burden, and maybe we could just relieve that and just let her be for now.
Councillor Kunst?
So just to clarify, is this coming back for the public to weigh in? Is this particular topic?
Mr. Cooner?
This would be characterized as a part of the Township of Langley licensing bylaw. Therefore, it would be there would be an opportunity for public input opportunity. The opportunity would be through written submissions and be brought forward prior to final adoption of the bylaw itself.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the sentiment. I think the goal of the reform overall was to simplify processing for secondary suite, currently business licenses, and simplify and remove the entire overhead of a business license process for secondary suites. And so you're going to now, if theoretically, if this were passed, you'd be having different rates on different property tax rolls for 1,000 or some subset of properties with secondary suites. You'd have to administrate that now.
Correct.
Correct. So I think that kind of defeats the purpose of the reform in general. So I thank you all. Thank you for answering the questions. I think it defeats the purpose of the reforms that are here in general. So I think I mentioned earlier, I have a potential solution for council to consider during the budget process to address this issue where some percentage of the family designated secondary suites are going to be family issues that are hardship and compassionate. But some percentage, staff have identified an unknown percentage, are not. And so do we want to go through that process to do that, or do we solve it in a different way? And I believe this is substantial reform, and these bylaw amendments here today are substantial reforms to address this lingering issue that is only going to increase as there is more housing, more secondary suites in our community. I feel that there's a better way to address this at the budget process once the issue is more specifically identified. If council wishes to consolidate this business licensing onto the parcel tax, property tax statement and remove the overhead that's currently occurring within property licensing for this category, that could be directed towards building permits, be directed towards other work. And so I don't support it, but I do very much support the intent and the desire to address this issue, which I believe can be addressed during the budget process, and I'll have a proposal to do it at that time. So with that, I'll call the question on this amendment. And that is defeated with Councillor Kuntz, Councillor Bailey, Councillor Wood, I was a councillor, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popte, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Martins, Councillor Ferguson opposed. Now back to the main motion. Motions as amended. Is there any other discussion on G1 as amended? Councillor Martins.
Thank you. I apologize. This is actually going back to earlier discussion. I think we went into the amendments. I hadn't had a chance to ask staff. It was about the multi-year business licenses. I'm just wondering, are those going to be transferable if there's a change of ownership? Is there any way for businesses, if they're closed within that time frame, to recover some of the funds, or what does that look like?
Thank you. Business licenses are non-transferable during change of owners, so a new owner would have to apply for a new business license. What we've put in the bylaw is if a multi-year license gets canceled within one year, or with 180 days, they would be charged 1 year of fees. And beyond that, it's at the discretion of the director of the department. Yeah.
And I think it would be hopeful that you would use your discretion to refund people their money. Absolutely. In the case of a multi-year. I think that that's going to be the default position unless there's an extraordinary circumstance.
Yes.
And the bylaw gives you that flexibility. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, so I certainly appreciate the question. I think it's going to be a new one. I've talked to other mayors throughout the region about it, and they're pretty interested in this reform and some of the benefits of reducing the number of categories, reducing the processing time, reducing the fees for many business types, and allowing for discounts on multi-year business licenses. So if nothing changes, you don't have to come back to the counter. And I think it's dealing with secondary suites that are currently business licenses. I think that that's the wrong place to have it. And again, I think these are great reforms, almost universally supported by council originally when the notice of motion came forward to initiate them. I think they've resulted in great work, and I appreciate it very much. And I've enjoyed the meetings we've had to work on it together a little bit and have a solid proposal for council coming forward. And I really appreciate you advancing these reforms consistent with the original notice of motion. And very much look forward to seeing this move forward here next year. And there's other amendments can happen as it rolls out. And if in regards to something as simple as water utility, the grace period could be extended if the water metering program is oversubscribed. There's a number of things can be revisited early next year as this gets done. And again, thank you very much for your work on this program. That call the question on G1. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. H1 rezoning application number 100. Oh yes.
Calling back Councillor Rent, Your Worship.
Yes, we are, Councillor Rent. Great, so we're on item H1, Councillor Rent. Item H1, rezoning application number 100776, bylaw number 6051 for first, second, third, and final adoption. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on H1? None. Call the question on H1. That carries unanimously. Bylaws for final adoption, J1, construction sound exemptions, bylaw number 6050. Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Van Bopta. Is there any discussion on J1? Seeing none, call the question on J1. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. J2, tree protection fees, charges, bylaw amendment, bylaw number 6045. I'll move it. Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on J2? Seeing none, call the question on J2. That carries unanimously. J3, 2025 permissive tax exemptions, bylaw number 6058. Moved by Councillor Rent. Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on J3? Seeing none, call the question. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, the permissive tax exemptions, we talked about this in the last council meeting, as I recall. And there was a report to come to staff with regards to including a new type of permissive exemption. Did we get that report? Because I don't recall seeing it.
Your Worship, to Councillor Richter, I believe that was the associated motion in relation to exploring options for the service agreement for the First Nations. Is that what you are referring to?
Yes.
Dear Worship, to Councillor Richter, that process is unfolding at the moment, and there'll be a report to Council, but that is not completely tied to this bylaw, as that's a service agreement, but the analogy was there that it to treat it like a permissive tax exemption.
Okay, so it's not going to be a permissive tax exemption, so it won't be part of this bylaw?
Dear Worship, to Councillor Richter, that is correct. Those are service agreements, and there will be a separate addendum to potentially the agreement. Staff are exploring options and just seeking a legal advice prior to bringing it to seeking Council's authorization to proceed.
Okay, and in the actual bylaw itself, I notice we're repealing 1, 2, 3, 4 different permissive tax exemptions. Does this replace all of those that are being repealed and all of the content?
Your worship, to Council Director, that is correct. It was 4 separate bylaws. We have all repealed them and combined them as one bylaw, as it's more efficient and more effective.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, if I may, through the chair to staff. It was, I believe, the protective services exemptions from Matsqui, Catesy, and Kwantlen First Nation. And you're still in the process of providing us a report, if I may, through the chair?
Your worship, to Council Ferguson, that is correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, call the question on J3. That carries unanimously. J4, temporary borrowing bylaws, bylaw number 6064, 6065, 6066, 6067. Moved by Councillor Rint. Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on J4? Seeing none. No. Councillor Martins.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to be crystal clear, since this is the final go on this, that this is a temporary borrowing to bridge till the long-term borrowing comes through, and that we're not potentially doubling up on our borrowing. That the funds we receive from the long-term will pay back this. I just want to make sure we're not doubling up on our debt with regards to this particular project. And I know it's been explained, and I would just appreciate for myself if I could just have some assurance, if I may, through the chair to staff.
Yeah, no, I can answer
on
it.
that, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, I can answer it. So their municipal finance authority has multiple borrowing mechanisms. One of them is permanent long-term debt, which takes a period of time to be approved. Earlier in the process, temporary borrowing under the same amount, same bylaw, is available, while the long-term borrowing is arranged with other municipalities and Metro Vancouver. This allows for it to be borrowed temporarily on the interim and then locked in to a longer long-term rate. It is the same debt.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no, thank you. And do we have any sense of time frame of then when this money would come available for us for the temporary, and when the long-term would possibly kick in? I understand there's some dates during the year when these are looked at, or?
Yeah, Ms. Ruff would have that information. Ms. Ruff, I believe, where are these ones at in the process?
So these ones, would be available for long-term, likely in the spring of 2025.
And then how soon does the temporary kick in?
I believe, Ms. Ruff, it's available upon approval of this bylaw.
Correct.
Oh, excellent. Okay. No, thank you for that. And I am excited about this project. It's this is going to really help out that community, that area adjacent to the school and the soccer community. So my questions aren't coming from a position of not, wanting to support that project. I just appreciate you walking me through that, so I have some assurance of what this looks like, the borrowing. Thank you.
Yeah, temporary borrowing is a valuable tool. It potentially allows the municipality, Ms. Ruff, I believe these bylaws, once permanent is available, exist for a period of 5 years.
Sorry, the temporary?
No, the permanent, once the bylaw reaches a permanent status, it's available for municipal use for up to 5 years?
Yes.
Yes, so would it be also theoretical that temporary borrowing could be used up to the maximum amount for that period of 5 years at a lower service cost, total service cost, and then potentially locked in at a lower principal amount if other sources of funding became available?
Yes, it would depend on the interest rates and the changes in interest rates over time. Temporary is at a market rate that floats.
And temporary could be locked in for a lower amount than the total bylaw authorizes if other sources of funding become available.
Correct.
Yeah. Councillor Van Popta?
So if and when the permanent mechanism is available, does it come back to council for reapproval to switch from a temporary to a permanent, or does it just convert?
It's a good question. Ms. Ruff?
No, we don't come back to council. It's already been approved for permanent.
Perfect, thank you.
Right, any other discussions on J4? No, call a question on J4. That carries. Councillor Richter, Councillor Kunst opposed. Item K1, this was deferred from September 9th. Rezoning application number 100757, bylaw number 6041. Is there any discussion on K? No, the referral's not on the floor yet, Councillor Ferguson. So I am going to make a referral, but right now this is back on the floor. Is there any discussion before I move a referral motion? Councillor Kunst.
Yeah, we received a lot of input on this from the residents that live in the area about the lack of parking, and I'm wondering if staff was able to work together with the proponent about that, and if there's anything more on this, because it got deferred, but I hadn't really heard anything more from our staff, if they did any more work on this with the proponent.
I believe there has not been, but the referral is going to request that.
Okay.
Yep. So seeing no other speakers, Ms. Bauer, if you could bring up that referral motion for me, please. Great. That the application be referred back to staff for council's future consideration to confirm with the proponent how the requirement to demonstrate adequate drop-off and pickup areas will be satisfied, and review if final adoption shall be subject to the approval of the local strata corporation. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on that referral? Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you. I was jumping the gun there on my second. My question, if I may, through the chair, the K1 involves an expansion of something, if I may be temporary this time, or just a couple hours. Would that be correct? And they're looking for a larger term based on their application, if I may, through the chair?
Yeah, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Ferguson. The unit is already at 1,929 square feet. The proponent, under the existing permitted uses, is providing for educational services. The proponent is trying to offer those educational services for an extended period of time, which, given licensing regulations, requires them to apply for a daycare license, which is what they've done here. Daycare license through so there's the zoning bylaw amendment pertains to that item. The zoning bylaw requirement requires a pickup drop-off area and places for staff. Currently, the proponent has indicated 3 spaces in the parking garage for staff members and 3 for the pickup drop-off area. The referral in front of council now would provide the opportunity for staff to engage with the proponent with respect to that, as well as inquire with respect to the strata.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. I really appreciate that, because it does clarify some of the questions and points made by myself and by other members of council, and I think this would be a good step to get some more information, discuss it with the applicant, come up with some kind of a solution, if I may. Thank you.
Mr. Richardson, I just want to confirm for council's information that item number 1 is already a requirement of the proposal, but it was going to be considered after approval in principle, and this simply moves it to before approval in principle.
Correct, Your Worship.
Yeah, so I think it's important here, this is already in the report, but I think from what we've heard from the public, it's important to see this prior to approval in principle, not after. If that makes sense, the rationale for the referral. Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate the intent of both. I am curious through yourself to staff, with clause number 2, would that be included as a condition of approval, or is that something that at this point we would say we are having as a condition? Because obviously in the past, when we've had an application come forward, we've added something as a condition. Is that what we're doing here? Because I don't read the first line as adding this as a condition of approval.
It's not. It's asking, if you see there, that council application be referred back to staff for council's future consideration to review if final adoption shall be subject to the approval of the local status corporation. So it's going to, my intent here would be for the report to come back with presenting that as an option for council to add it as a condition and see the ramifications and potentially achieve legal advice on that process prior to it being considered.
That would be something I'd be curious about, because I'm curious through staff if we've seen other applications in the past where something has been subject to the approval of the local strata.
Mr. Richardson, have we seen this before?
Through Your Worship, not in that direct a manner, which is why I think the referral is appropriate to get that information and provide that information to council.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I think the situation here being slightly unique in the sense that from what I've seen and discussions with both the proponent and the residents, which I've had on site, that this building, I don't think anticipated this use at that location. So I think it's appropriate to see if we can ask, the proponent to consider working with the Strata Corporation more seriously. Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, just one last question. If for some reason this does not get approval, is this Wonder and Grow Learning Center in jeopardy as it currently is, or can they continue on as they are?
Ms. Richardson, do you know?
Through your worship, Councillor Kunst, the existing zoning permissions would remain. So if the proposed rezoning did not prevail, they'd have their current permissions and they'd be able to operate the business as they currently do. From my discussions with the proponent, they indicate they're quite successful in their business and the educational services they're offering. Once again, my understanding is that they just want to offer that on a longer time frame, which requires that Fraser Health daycare license, your worship.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on the referral. K1. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Ms. Bauer, K2, you require a motion to reconsider, I believe. You successful?
Yes, in this case, we would need to start with a motion to reconsider.
Yeah. So I'll move reconsideration, seconded by Councillor Rent. Call the question on reconsideration of K2. That carries. Councillor Richter, Councillor Kunst opposed. So we have to move it again, I believe, Ms. Bauer. Is that correct?
Yes, it's back on the table as it started.
So we don't have to move and second it again. It's been a while since we've done. So we have to move it and second it again.
Yeah.
So I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rint, and we'll move. Going to come back to you, Councillor Martin. So we're going to move straight to the amendment, and then we can discuss the motion as amended if it's so amended. So I'm going to open up secondary motion. I'm going to move the recommended amendment. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Councillor Kunst.
Yeah, so I did not really receive, I mean, I don't know if anybody got any information about this. So I recall that we're a year in on this same situation. I guess my question would be, if we're going to reconsider the CACs for Williams, are we also going to reconsider the CACs for the Smith and for the Brookswood neighborhood plans?
So no, I would be unless a member of council wishes to move that via notice of motion. This is being done because as of right now, Williams neighborhood plan is not adopted, whereas the other two examples are.
I see. And are these CACs going to be renegotiated? So I'm just trying to figure out what's kind of going on right here.
I believe if these amendments are successful and the associated motions propose a process to consider that.
I see. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Martins?
Thank you. I think what I'm confused on to start with is what exactly is the motion before us now? It's that council adopt the community amenity contributions policy number 07166 as amended, and then with the addition of your recommended amendment. Like, I'm just wondering, what does the actual altogether look like then with the amendment?
Ms. Bauer, I believe the policy was back on the floor unamended, and this is a new amendment to the unamended version that's been reconsidered. Do I have that correct? Maybe go through it so everybody's clear on what's going on.
The policy is back on the floor as it appeared in the agenda in early June. So that would be what was recommended at that time. As I understand, what's happened now is that policy is back for discussion, and the mayor has made an amendment to that policy to that all target contribution rates specific to the Williams neighborhood plan be removed. So in that policy, remove the Williams plan information.
Okay. Oh, thank you for that. So I know I just heard, Mr. Mayor, you were saying the reason we're only looking at the Williams neighborhood plan, their rates being removed, is because the other neighborhood plans have already proceeded. And are those rates included in the neighborhood plans? I thought they were embedded in this policy. Are they in both places?
They're not. No. CACs are a council policy. They exist in a council policy document. They do not reside inside the neighborhood plan bylaws.
Okay. All right. So then I'm not really understanding why I'm not following the logic here about then why we're pulling the Williams neighborhood plan rates be removed, why we wouldn't just do that across the board. 'Cause
Mr.
it's not tied to the neighborhood plan as
Mr.
far as in it.
Well, Mr. Cooner may be able to address that there. On the June 10th, when it was considered for Brookswood Fern Ridge, Williams was added to that document. Maybe you could go through the process that resulted in some confusion internally.
Yes, Your Worship. So the CAC policy amendments were brought forward to Council's consideration on June 10th, along with the Brookswood Fern Ridge neighborhood CAC target contribution rates. The Brookswood neighborhood plan did, I believe the public hearing was that day or the subsequent meeting. The Williams neighborhood plan was supposed to be considered at a later date. There was just maybe potentially some technical items that need to get sorted out. Therefore, this is probably more appropriate to remove the target contribution rates for the Williams neighborhood plan. And then the recommended associated motions are to essentially conduct additional sufficient public consultation on that policy prior to it coming forward with the amendments to that policy. So this would probably be appropriate given the circumstances.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I won't be supporting this amendment. I think that we should be removing all target contribution rates from the policy, if that's what we're looking at.
So I'm confused. So this is removing one specific to a plan not adopted, but because you want them all removed, you don't want to collect CACs?
It's not about what I want. I'm not satisfied that when we're specifying one plan based on the fact that neighborhood plan has already been in place, so therefore we're sticking with the target contribution rates for those plans, but we're not for one that's not. I'm not following the logic there, that's all. So that's why I don't support it. I'd like it if we were having a larger conversation of all target contribution rates, actually, because they're embedded in this policy. They're not embedded in the neighborhood plans, that's all.
Yeah, so Mr. Cooner, maybe they wouldn't be embedded in the neighborhood plans. Maybe you need to go over that again.
So the community amenity contribution policy exists on its own. It sets all target contribution rates specific to developments within the entire township areas, and some of them are more specific to neighborhood plans, like the Brookswood neighborhood plan, the Smith neighborhood plan, or the Williams neighborhood plan. So this item or recommended amendment and associated motions are basically giving staff direction to remove it, conduct additional and sufficient public consultation on the potential community amendment contributions for this specific plan, and bring those amendments forward at a later date when we'll be considering a final adoption of the Williams neighborhood plan. So staff's understanding is these will come forward at a later date. They're just being removed temporarily here to make sure that we do sufficient public consultation.
And to align it with council's consideration of the adoption of the Williams neighborhood plan. So I think it's been a interesting situation to see a community amenity contribution proposed amendments come forward when the community plan pertaining to the amendments is not on the agenda. So we're clarifying and confirming the process in the future to consider them consistent with adoption of the neighborhood plan.
That is correct, and that has been the past practice.
Yeah, so to not support it would suggest support for the CACs specific to the Williams neighborhood plan. Councilor Richter? We're moving on, Councilor Martins. Councilor Richter, go ahead. We'll come back to you. Councilor Richter, go ahead.
No,
Councilor Richter, go ahead.
No, but then she didn't finish her thought, and then if you
Councilor
give
Richter, you have the floor.
Okay. Are we voting just on the first one, or are we voting on all four of them now? What
We're
was
voting
moved?
just on the amendment to the policy. The associated motions stand on their own.
Okay, but they haven't been moved yet.
That's correct.
Okay. So, why are we doing this? Was there a legal opinion that was obtained on this?
Believe this, Mr. Cooner, we've answered that, but please go ahead. Please answer it again.
Your Worship to Councilor Richter, the community amenity policy did come, as Ms. Bauer had explained, before councils to adopt on June 10th, and that came in line with the Brookswood neighborhood plan. The amendments were proposed to the Williams neighborhood plan, but the public hearing never was conducted at that date. It was at a later date. Therefore, the past practice has been to bring the community amenity contributions policy for amendments in line with a neighborhood plan. The policy was adopted, and then the plan public hearing for Williams neighborhood came at a later date. So to more align it with the Williams neighborhood plan timeline, it would make sense to remove it now, conduct some public consultation, and then bring it forward prior to final adoption of the Williams neighborhood plan.
Okay. So did we get a legal opinion about these 4 amendments? Or did Township get a legal opinion on these 4 amendments?
They're not amendments, Councillor Richter. So the first one is,
They're titled amendments, Mayor Woodward's recommended amendment.
and then you are reading the second title, which is Mayor Woodward's recommended associated motions. So
Yeah,
they're
and-
not,
and-
I think it's just important to clarify the process because process keeps coming up.
I
This-
have the floor, Mr. Mayor.
This is an amendment to the policy that's on the floor. The other 3 stand alone as associated amendments. So there are not 4 amendments. There are 3 motions and an amendment. The associated motions are not applicable if the amendment is not adopted.
Okay. Did Township get a council or legal opinion on this?
To your worship, to Councillor Richter, in the event that there's any legal implications, we seek legal advice from our external legal counsels. And my understanding is that anything in relation to legally sensitive items we would have obtained legal advice on them.
Okay. So did we get a written legal opinion on it?
Through your worship to Councillor Richter, I can speak more in relation to any legal advice or opinions enclosed for this specific item.
Okay, so were these legal opinions, these written opinions circulated to all of council?
You're presupposing that legal opinions exist, Councillor Richter.
Well, that's the question I'm asking.
I
I
think
don't know why we're doing this. Did we get a legal opinion saying we should be doing this?
Mr.
Because-
Cooner has informed you that he can update you in closed.
Okay, well, okay, fine. This is the 3rd time we're pulling back on Williams by my count. I don't understand why we would be doing this and how much more of a delay this is going to cause to the Williams neighborhood plan. And for us to be doing this, I hope there is a written legal opinion backing that up, and I hope at some point council will get it, because I haven't seen one, and I don't know why we're doing this. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, basically, I did want to say that as we go through the planning process on any plan, whether it's an official community plan or a neighborhood plan, there's a number of steps we have to take. As many of us know that have sat at this council table, that Williams is a relatively new community plan as compared to larger Brookswood or something in the past Brookswood or Fort Langley, Murrayville, and a number of others that have been established plans for years. Some are going through revisions, but this is a relatively a new plan, and I think it's important to go through as many steps as possible to get it right. I don't know if there's a clock or a timeline to get things done, but the most important thing is to get things done and get them done right. One of the associated motions, which we haven't voted upon, that's why we're having a discussion, is to conduct additional sufficient public and property owner consultation. That's the transparency that we've been looking for and continue to look for at this table. So I think the motion speaks for itself as to moving forward in I guess, a professional manner and doing things right. And at the end of the day, have a good community, both plan and neighborhood plan for Williams. Thank you.
Thank you. And call the question on the amendment to K2. That carries with Councillor Richter, Councillor Coons, Councillor Martins opposed. Now back to the policy as amended, and I'm going to call the question on K2 as amended. That carries. Councillor Richter, Councillor Coons, Councillor Martin's opposed. I'm going to move the associated motions, all three together as one. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion? Councillor Martins? Nope, nope. Is there any discussion on the associated motions? Councillor Martins? Something's wrong with the software here, Ms. Barr. Showing the same councillor names twice. So I'm going to clear the queue. Okay, so these three motions are on the floor, a bit of a software malfunction. So any discussion on, any questions on these three motions?
Sorry, so my mic is on. Can I
Yeah,
now
there's
ask?
something wrong with the software here. I'm going to try this again, so we'll come back to Councillor Richter. Is that working?
Yeah,
Go
I'm
ahead.
going to ask the same question. Was there a written legal opinion on these three motions obtained by Township?
I believe you can be updated in closed, Councillor Richter.
I don't see that. I'd like to know if there was a written legal opinion obtained on these.
You'll be updated in closed, Councillor Richter.
Oh, that's such a cop-out.
I think there's pending litigation, Councillor Richter, so I think we're here to protect the corporation. Councillor Kuntz, go ahead.
Yeah, so fair enough, but then maybe we could have had some sort of direction or some conversation, before these motions were made. So it's not that I don't support what I see here. It's just that if we're going to go into closed and get some legal advice, why would we vote for this now? So for that, I don't feel comfortable voting at this time, so I will not be voting in favor.
So these were filed on before the Wednesday. I think all members of council have had them since Thursday. Did you reach out to the administration to discuss those concerns prior to the council meeting? Councillor Martins, go ahead. So is your mark working? Councillor Martins?
Yeah, it is.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
I thought you were asking a question to
No,
Councillor
go ahead. I'm
Kuntz.
not expecting an answer. Go ahead, Councillor Martins.
Okay, so I concur. How could I possibly make an informed decision here without having all the information in front of me when we're talking about legal? As you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, there is a lawsuit, and it seems to me, reading between the lines and reading what I did in the Langley Advance Times, that's the way I found out about a lawsuit, and your commentary in the paper about it. And it does seem like there's other things at play here, and it all seems very extraordinary. When I look at the policy, the community amenity contributions policy, it was approved by council in July of 2018. And now we have made an amendment earlier in this section, which would be number 10. And then the second part of this associated motion is that staff report to council with draft policy amendments again. So that's now 11 amendments on this one policy, the majority being in this term, 9, I believe. So maybe 8. And I'm not understanding why. This is not typical. I understand when a new policy is created, there's bound to be some housekeeping items, some minor amendments that need to be done. There's unintended consequences of a new policy. That makes sense to me, but this just seems, it's like back and forth, and I can't even keep up, and that's why I keep asking these questions, like what exactly is it at this point we are talking about? Because it keeps changing from day to day, and I can't even imagine how much time it's causing the staff to have to keep revisiting this and look at something else and then bring it all back to us, and the time and money involved for the taxpayers. And then on the other side, the proponents trying to get their, what they want to accomplish in this plan. And there's this, it's creating this huge uncertainty for everybody. And it's really frustrating to me. And I do agree with Councillor Ferguson in that, let's be professional. Let's get things right. But this doesn't seem to me to be an appropriate process, this back and forth, 11 amendments on one policy. It's just extraordinary to me. And I think it's getting kind of silly. I'm not going to support this because I have no confidence that this will come through and then we'll have a reconsideration again because perhaps there's another legal filing against the township. I'm being asked to make decisions in a vacuum without information. I can't ask for staff time directly if it's going to be over a certain amount of time. It does have to flow through this table. And so, no, I'm very limited, and I'm not being provided with adequate information here, so I vehemently do not support this.
Ms. Bauer, can you put the amendments on the screen? Can we put the part of the agenda up on the screen for everyone to see? What these associated motions actually are? I'm going to deal with this right now. Yeah, so there they are there. The council directs staff to conduct additional, sufficient public and property owner consultation on potential amendments to CACs in the Williams Neighborhood Plan, which have now been removed because the plan is not adopted. That staff subsequently report to council with draft policy amendments for the Williams Neighborhood Plan for its consideration. And the council defers final adoption of the Williams Neighborhood Plan further until such time as that process can be completed. Mr. Cooner, do you feel the need for a legal opinion to conduct sufficient public and property owner consultation on a public policy document for a neighborhood plan that has been granted approval in principle?
Your Worship, I'd probably still refer some of these to legal questions in relation to just this policy or Williams Neighborhood Plan to just close just due to the current circumstances.
Yeah, I concur. This is to conduct consultation. This is to get more information that's apparently not provided. And it is to consider the neighborhood plan consistent with that amendment after that consultation has been conducted. That's what the motions say. They do not, there's a debate going on about motions that are not on the floor. If you don't support more consultation with ownership and public in regards to CACs, if you don't support getting a report on what those amendments would be for the Williams Neighborhood Plan, and you don't support deferring the neighborhood plan until you receive that information, then you would vote against these. If you're wanting to consult with the public and the ownership, if you're wanting to see another report on these to get the information, and you want to see the neighborhood plan considered consistent with that consultation, then you would support this. I think it's pretty clear what the responsible choice is. Councillor Van Popte, go ahead.
If we want to talk about keeping things professional, I think it's a good thing to note that the information and the things that we say at this table are factual. So the narrative that people aren't getting the information ahead of time is incorrect. We receive special closed packages, we receive the same reports, and if people are not in attendance at those meetings or don't read their packages, it is not the duty of this council to follow up with people to make sure that they're reading their information. So I disagree with that statement. I think it looks poorly on us who do our homework and do our research and do attend meetings. And so I will leave it at that. But I don't think that it's in the best interest of this corporation to be painted that some of us receive information and other of us don't.
Yeah, and this was on the agenda for days, and councillors had the opportunity to reach out, and perhaps they did, and perhaps they didn't. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment more based on my experience rather than this particular application, if you'll allow me. Those of us who have sat at this table a while know how important it is when we're discussing legal issues, and that's why we have legal issues regarding our staff, which is our staff contracts. That means property and property issues, and also areas of being taken under legal challenges by either residents, businesses, or associations. If we say something at this table that could jeopardize significantly a legal case or could be entered into as evidence against us, that is very, very difficult for the public to defend. Fortunately, an action that happened against this council many years ago where we were taken at task on comments that members of council made during a public meeting. And when we talk about legal matter, it's very, very important that we don't stray from talking about public issues and public things and not legal items, because that could cause a significant challenge for the people and the community in the future, and can be extremely expensive. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to call the question on the 3 associated motions. Yeah. Yeah. I put a motion on. Okay, go ahead. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yes, that the 3 associated motions be deferred until all members of council receive any written legal opinions on the subject and have the time to review them.
It's, take it. That's been seconded by Councillor Kunst. Is there any discussion on that motion referral?
Yes, I think we're rushing into these, and I think that if there is a legal opinion and council gets it and can read it and digest it and ask questions, we may have changes to these recommended associated motions to make. I still remain concerned about how much longer this is going to delay final for that particular neighborhood plan. And I think we need to have that input before we move forward. The only way I can see to do it right now is to move deferral on these until we get that input. Thank you.
Right, call the question on that deferral. K2. And that's defeated. Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popte, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Ferguson opposed. I'm calling the question on the associated motions for K2. That carries with Councillor Richter, Councillor Kunst, Councillor Martin's opposed. Does anybody wish to make a mayor and council report? Councillor Rent, go ahead.
So it is Fire Prevention Week coming up, and a few of you may know that I had a house fire over a week ago and lost pretty much everything. I just want to say thank you to the fire department and police for responding so quickly, and it could have been a lot worse. So thank you.
Yeah, I concur on that, and Councillor Ferguson has gone through it, and I can only imagine what it's like, and sympathies go to you, and I'm glad no one was hurt. No one was hurt?
Nope.
No pets? No one was hurt, yeah. That's what's important. Councillor Kunst.
I'm really sorry to hear about that, Councillor Rent. Our condolences, and thankfully nobody was injured. So I just wanted to report that myself, Councillor Richter, and Councillor Martins went on the agriculture farm tour, and it was great. We went to Stable Harvest Farm, to the Berry Farm, and also to, help me out here, Vulcan Academy. And I just want to thank staff for the planning. I think there was, 50 people that attended from different places all over the Lower Mainland, so that was really, really cool. So yeah, I just wanted to state the obvious and a big thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
A few things. First, I want to recognize today, a year ago, a very significant occurrence happened, and that was the attack on Israel. And I think that people should remember that, because of the huge loss of life on both sides of this conflict, and would really hope that in the near future that calmer heads prevail, and that we remember there's one hell of a battle going on over there, and an awful lot of people are dying. Second, this is Burn Awareness Week, and I had the honor of being on the BCPFF Burn Fund for 8 years as the director, so I know directly how important this week is. And in fact, Councillor Richter and I, as soon as I heard he had Councillor Rent and I had a discussion as soon as I heard about this, and I had to talk to him about the realities of what he went through, and narrowly escaped, and things like CO poisoning that he suffered very significantly, and people don't understand that CO attaches to hemoglobin 200 times harder than oxygen. So CO poisoning is not just now, get some oxygen and it's gone, and And he thought it was rather interesting when I said, "Did your hair still smell?" That goes into the reference. He said, "No, but when I take a shower, after I have a shower, I can still smell the fire," which is what firefighters are very common and very well acquainted with. And going into that, I want to bring into the point of Councillor Rint's fire. There is a fundamentally different thing, and this, I want to really make sure I'm clear this time, because one other time I was very grossly misrepresented and misunderstood. I am not talking about paid-on-call firefighters. I am talking about the paid-on-call fire system, which is antiquated and inadequate. And I'll show you right now. His fire was in Hall 2's area. So at 2/17/08, to be very specific, Hall 2 was tapped out. They never answered. Hall 2 is a paid-on-call hall. They were responsible for first-in response to that fire. Instead, Hall 6, which came all the way from Murrayville, was tapped out at the same time, and they took roughly 15 minutes to get there because of the distance. And that shows a fundamental difference between paid-on-call response and career response, because those minutes very easily could have cost Councillor Rint his life. And then, that's not the only one. The backup hall for that hall, Hall 7, was tapped out, and again, no response. One firefighter from that went directly to the fire, which is incredibly dangerous. You either don't have your proper gear or you don't have your proper equipment. So this is a glaring example of why it's important that we continue to staff up career firefighters in this township. I also want to go and talk about the fire in Langley City. Langley City, the township sent 4 pieces of equipment there. Engine 6, Rescue 4, Quint 4, and 4-2. So we have an inadequate amount of firefighters. Now, that's mutual aid, and so everyone understands what mutual aid agreement is if someone calls, like if the city of Langley calls, township answers, and there's an agreement on how they'll do that. And it is a widespread practice, and it is very good, especially for the smaller departments. Problem is, we lost 4 of our response vehicles to take care of the township residents and their structures. So when this is something that I'm hoping is going to evolve, as we now have people who are in charge who have a lot of experience in this, that you have to make sure that when we do mutual aid, that they are backfilled. So we do not lose a response in the township. And it is a very tricky thing because Langley City has 1 engine, okay, and then they try to backfill on calls, okay? I'm hoping they didn't backfill Langley City instead of township. So while these things sound like they're really easy, they are a very complex situation to deal with. They did the right thing by sending our help to the city. Otherwise, it could have been disastrous. Again, because their city is understaffed. So these are the complications that come with situations like this. And again, this is not only inadequate staffing in the township, which we're trying to correct, and which is the main reason why I came out of retirement, but Langley City had better look at staffing up also, because every time they roll, they are in gross violation of the most important regulation, 3123, entry into buildings. So I hope this is a wake-up call to Langley City, that they start to staff up more firefighters.
Councillor Pratt.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I just wanted to take the time to thank staff for all the work that went into hosting the Langley Event Center 2040 open house earlier last week. Councillors Martins, Kunst, and I know yourself were there. Councillor Van Popta as well came by, and I think it was for all of us a pretty good learning opportunity to see what the potential is at that site and hear from the community. I think having a blank canvas that big in a community like ours is a phenomenal opportunity, especially if we can combine it with adequate public transit investment from a higher level of government. So really looking forward to what that site can become over the next couple decades, and just really wanted to thank staff again for finally helping us show the public what could be done with that beautiful site. And also, before I move on, if after everybody's done their mayor and council reports, if we could have a quick break before we get into items for other business.
Yeah, sure. Councillor Van Popta?
Yeah, so I'll just report on Metro Water Committee. Was last Wednesday, another full agenda. Been approving, well, we approved the financial plan for water services, got lots of big capital projects coming up. One of them being, oh, and we also approved the drinking water management plan. Starting to award tenders for the Coquitlam Lake water supply project, which includes drawing more water out of the Coquitlam Lake, but it requires a lot of upgrades to where we're pulling waters from. So good meeting, lots of things coming up in the coming year in their work plan, and I'll keep you updated as it happens.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, oh, thank you. Well, I think we do have to have a discussion on fire. My regrets to concerns out to Councillor Rint. My wife and I had a chance to go by. No one wants to see the house. Nobody wants to see that happen as we had ourselves, and it does. As much as it doesn't take away my ability to work as a councillor, but when you're not back in your house, as I'm not back in my house, it is a stressful time. So certainly wish that upon Councillor Rint and his family. And as far as the fire, I know that Councillor Bailey has commented about the fire department. That's something that we could look at. Although I did want to ask him about the other halls, Hall 4, Hall 8, and you know where they were at, but and also measuring the distance. I guess there's all sorts of questions that we need to ask and find out. But as long as I've known, I believe the city has only had one vehicle. I think they might even been replaced it a couple of times, but it's still one vehicle. That's something that they can discuss and we can discuss as well. I did want to say on my report to council today, I was unfortunate I couldn't make it to the agricultural tour because I've always liked that, and being a quasi-member of the agriculture community, sitting on the Otter Co-op board for 3 terms, which is 9 years, and being involved with the farming community, I've always enjoyed that tour. Is that at budget for Metro Vancouver, as Councillor Van Popka is indicating water? Well, we were going over all the services for Metro Vancouver, and certainly if any member of council needs information or wants me to provide, I'd be more than prepared to do that. Plus, Mr. Mayor, Metro Vancouver and their staff has called out to all communities, if we wish a presentation from Metro, all we have to do is ask, okay? So that is out there. I wanted all councils and members to know that. If we want a presentation from Metro Vancouver, all we have to do is ask. And we have to do it formally by, some kind of a motion or a request from yourself, Mr. Mayor. That's my report. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I just want to say I have a great deal of respect for the paid call fire members. And in my opinion, they are servants of this community, just like any other employee is who works for the township, and as such are fully and completely deserving of respect in the workplace. I would also like to note that personnel issues, which would clearly include openly made comments about the satisfactory performance of a job duty, belongs in special closed, not in the open meeting.
Do you have
Thank
a council report, Councillor Richter?
No, I want to
So you have
go
no
on
council-
the
so
record
you have
as
no council
saying
report.
I have every bit as much respect for paid call firefighters as I do for career firefighters. Thank you.
Okay, the the budget is required to pay them, of course. Councillor Martins, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm changing theme from some of the previous comments, although I did want to also acknowledge Councillor Rint. It's been a rough couple of weeks for you, and very, very sorry. And if there's anything I can do to be of assistance, it's been pretty rotten. But I'm glad you're here to tell us about it. So changing gears, changing emergency services. Superintendent Marsden from the Langley RCMP detachment accepted a transfer to Edmonton, Alberta, and left Langley detachment at the end of last month. In 2021, Marsden stepped into the role of officer in charge after the position was unexpectedly vacated. He immediately set to seeking input from his personnel and community partners to adopt best practices while incorporating his own. During his tenure, he created a smooth-running detachment with the highest morale in the Lower Mainland. He was a strong advocate for officer wellness, the fitness space that we are considering with that, and a dedicated mental health car in Langley, partnership with police officer and psych nurse, commonly referred to as Car 67, and more recently through the provincial government, the MICR teams. I am grateful for Superintendent Marsden's collaborative approach, serving two distinct municipalities with sometimes differing priorities. And I was grateful for the opportunity before he left town to get together with him and retired Inspector Steve Wade. And I won't show you the picture of OIC Marsden, but he did manage to polish off a 50-ounce steak at the dinner. It was pretty impressive. So he will be missed, and I look forward to who comes in his stead, that we continue to move forward the leadership there at the helm of the RCMP. Thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
Obviously, I wasn't clear enough when I started my discussion. Let me repeat this. This is not about paid-on-call firefighters, of which I was one when I began my career. This is about a system. This is about policy and about response. This is about the difference between a career system of response and a paid-on-call system of response. I respect paid-on-call firefighters because they do exactly the same job that I did, but in much tougher circumstances. So I really wish someone would quit trying to say that I do not respect paid-on-call firefighters. This is a gross misrepresentation, and it is a system I'm talking about, not firefighters. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Bailey. That's not a council report, but I think I'll allow it. I think this has gone a little. It's unnecessary, I think, to sort of take cheap political shots over, now a tragic fire from a member of council at his household. Thankfully, his family members weren't present. It's now turned into, some speechifying about trying to accuse another councillor. I think this whole thing is really unfortunate. I think the way some of us here conduct ourselves is really not befitting of a councillor. Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Yeah, there's some more positive note here. I just want to say that it's been a while, I guess it's about over a week ago or so, and we didn't have a meeting on the last Monday. So on the 28th of September, the three events occurred. The Aldergrove Athletic Park synthetic turf completion project, where the kids playing soccer and other activities, very positive. And at 10:30, a very important memorial tree planting for folks that we remember in this community. And I always like to remind people that we've got tree plantings for families and others throughout the community, and not just in Aldergrove, in more than one location.
Sorry about that. I apologize.
That's all right. That's you know what? You're not perfect, and believe it or not, neither am I. And I want to say that we also have tree plantings in Murrayville and in Fort Langley, and I think Brookswood as well, and throughout the community. And even though they're not something that we talk about on a regular basis. They're important because the families that we plant those trees for are very, very grateful. So I wanted to say that. Thank you to all of council for doing this.
Does anybody wish to make any other reports? I'm going to get to other business and then we'll take a break. Is there any questions on 01 to 2 for information? Questions or comment? Nope. With that, we'll move to other business and we'll take a 5-minute recess. Return here at 3:40. 9-minute recess. Return here at 3:40. Thank you. Okay, great. Get back underway. Item Q1, 27th Avenue replacement at Fire Hall number 5 and a future park location. I'll move the motion. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Ritt. Is there any discussion on Q1? Seeing none, call the question on Q1. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Q2, Councillor Ritt.
Oops. I think the motion speaks for itself. It's pretty clear what
Is there
we're
a
looking
seconder
for.
to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Van Popta. Is there any good? Speaks for itself. Any discussion? Councillor Martins.
Yeah, thank you. I believe this intersection right now is it 2 stop signs, not 4? 4-way? Is that right?
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
2.
Yeah, so definitely, the traffic volume has increased over the years in that area, and I always find 2-way intersections a bit dicey. So anyways, I just wanted to clarify that and appreciate that you're bringing this forward. Has this already been identified by staff as potentially needing to increase the signalization and that sort of improvements to that intersection?
Mr. Cooner?
To your worship, to Councillor Martins, I don't believe it's considered on one of the traffic lists as at this time.
Okay. No, thank you very much.
Councillor Richter?
Yes, I'm wondering if staff could include in their report back to council 2 other options other than signalization, which would include a 4-way stop or a roundabout, as well as the costs of each option. Is that?
Potential improvements might cover that, but if you wish to make an amendment, go ahead.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking a roundabout would work there, as would a 4-way stop.
If you wish to make an amendment, go ahead, Councillor Richter.
Do I need to make an amendment?
Yes, you do.
Oh, okay, I'll make an amendment then.
What's your amendment, Councillor?
That potential improvements include a 4-way stop and roundabout plus respective costs.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Kunst. Any other discussion on that amendment? Councillor Martins?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I am sufficiently confused. So I heard that potential improvements could mean different options. I think that's what the language means there. So is this amendment necessary, or would staff be able to take it under advisement and provide some potential solutions?
If the council wishes more information on the report, I think it's important to amend the motion.
So I guess what my question is, like the words potential improvements, would staff see that as options? Like that's why I'm just thinking, is this motion necessary, or is that already included in this wording?
Mr. Cooner?
To your worship, to Councillor Martins, the potential improvements would provide enough language there to explore different options. However, if there needs to be more certainty or direction given to staff, then the amendment would provide that.
Okay, no, thank you. So I won't support this only because I have faith in staff that the various options will be considered when the report comes back. That would be great. Thank you.
Councillor Richter?
I just wanted to add a clarification for Councillor Martins, and that is that the mayor directed me to make an amendment.
Going to call the question on. You wish to review the process again? No? Great. So we'll call the question on the amendment to Q2. That's defeated. Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popta, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Martins, Councillor Ferguson opposed. Now back to the main motion as unamended. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, call the question on Q2. That carries unanimously. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the motion entitled New Library for Downtown Aldergrove and speak to it.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'll quickly just go into the therefore clauses. I think the whereas clauses stand for themselves, but therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to include a relocated and potentially expanded branch of the Fraser Valley Regional Library within the ground floor mixed-use spaces at the BC Builds housing development approved to proceed at the corner of 272 Street and Fraser Highway. and that a potential library contained community spaces that may be made available for use by both library patrons and the public. Through conversations with the members of the public, through sort of experience with best practices in planning, I think having an institution like this in the downtown area that it continues to grow, especially when we're having new apartments built nearby that will definitely house a mix of people, whether it's students, whether it's young families, whether it's seniors who use libraries in high numbers, as well as with the recently completed seniors complex immediately to the south. I think this would be a great site, highly accessible, highly visible, and overall would be beneficial to the downtown core of Aldergrove. So I thank Council for considering it today.
Just for Council's information, I have 3 amendments to this motion coming up. Councilor Richter?
Yeah, I'm not clear on what exactly is wrong with the existing location. It's right beside a high school. It's in a community center adjacent to a park, and it's well used. I know because that's the main library that I use. Not only that, but there's a lot of available parking. Like moving this to the downtown core, I'm not sure what the parking's going to end up being like down there, and whether it will be as convenient as the parking that's already there in the existing location. The other thing is this motion basically asks staff to proceed without having given council any idea of the cost. Thank you.
Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, I really like this proposal, and one of the reasons I like it, other than just centralization, a much more accessible thing, because different transit and all that stuff goes down that road. I also like the idea that the existing library, which is too small for its space already, could also be potentially turned into more space for the Langley Arts Council, because the Langley Arts Council are crammed in there way too tight. And it's either renovate that building at great expense and push it out to a bigger footprint, or you move a library which is too cramped for its space into a brand new, more accessible place, and you can make it truly accessible to everyone. And at the same time, you can help the Langley Arts Council with badly needed space that I know through discussions with them that they would love to have.
Councilor Martins?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Pratt, for bringing this forward. I am a proponent for libraries, and this is a great initiative. A question, if I may, through the chair to staff. December 11th, 2023, there was an open house that some of us attended here at this table, and Councillor Pratt included, at the ACUCC, and it was for an OCP amendment and rezoning application number 100271. And the intent of that open house was to receive public input on potential ground level uses and civic opportunities. So I don't recall if there was any sort of report back from staff, a follow-up from that gathering where we got to see the public input. I know what I heard when I was speaking with people that evening. But was there any sort of report that came back about the different suggestions they had for the ground floor, the opportunities at that building?
To your worship, to Councillor Martin, the past practice has been when there's public input opportunities or open houses is to have those submissions attached to a memorandum and brought forward as a memorandum attached there and brought to council on an agenda. My understanding is on the December 18th agenda, when the public hearing for that item was supposed to be considered in the evening, there was a memorandum that attached the open house sign in the comment sheets.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that did come back, because I too, many people I spoke to that evening and communications I've received since certainly support this idea, this motion here. And I just want to speak, I'm in favor of it. I think it's great. And again, thank you for bringing that forward.
Councilor Ferguson?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think I don't have any problem with the motion. It's a good motion, and it's got an opportunity for something to happen which is favorable. I do also have, Mr. Mayor, an amendment.
Okay, great. Come back to you. Ms. Bauer, if you could bring up the First Amendment, please. Since Councillor Pratt advanced what to do potentially with the BC Builds project that's proceeding at this location, I did ask staff what the status of that is, and it does feel appropriate to consider other direction for staff to consider within that building. So I'm going to move an amendment that staff additionally include a relocated, potentially expanded community policing office in consultation with the RCMP to determine the ideal location within the proposed development, configuration, and size for the future of downtown Aldergrove. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any? So I think it's appropriate to consider this and to move forward with this at this location in combination with the library, something very similar to what we see here in this building. And I think it works well, and I think this is something very appropriate to have the option to locate this in the building in a configuration that will work, which of course could also be passed on to other uses down the road, but it'd probably be hard to meet their specifications outside of new construction. So I believe it's appropriate to have this considered as part of the BC Builds process to improve downtown Aldergrove along with the new library, and I'm very proud to move it and have it seconded by Councillor Bailey. Councillor Martins.
Thank you. So was this a request made by the RCMP to move and expand the community police office? And I'm only asking because my understanding from their current property, well, outdated, and I'm in support of a newer facility. They rely on the storage for vehicles and bikes. They have a lot of other things going on there as well, and training. Beyond just the actual CPO. So my concern is that if we're just predetermining that they are being relocated, are we also contemplating the other uses that they have at the current property, how that will look and where they go? Because I do know they have problems with parking, and they are currently having to park some of their assets not at the main detachment because they can't fit them all there.
Presumably those questions would be answered in the portion of the motion that stipulates consultation with the RCMP.
But it's consultation about just the configuration within that development.
And the requirements thereof, configuration and size.
Right. Yes. So it's configuration and size of a community police office. I'm just thinking about the other uses that at their current Aldergrove location.
That would be captured under configuration.
That configuration of a parking lot?
Or of the unit itself for all the needs that they have. Very similar in concept to the CPO that's in Willoughby, which is in a business park.
Right, which has a gated lot behind. So I'm putting that out there now because it seems that this is kind of, anyways, I don't know because I'm not in the know. I just, from my communications with the RCMP and having attended their current facility, it's not just a CPO. It's being used for a lot of other reasons as well, like a satellite. So
yeah, that's great. That will emerge in the consultation with the RCMP. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I have the same question on this amendment as on the original motion, and that is, what's wrong with the existing building? It's in a good location. It provides all kinds of opportunity to be accessed by the community. And not just that, it's on the same street as where this relocation would go. And when we originally took over that building, which was a heritage building of sorts, there was a lot of money spent at the time to upgrade that building in order for it to serve as a CPO. So I'm concerned that here we have another motion with no price tag attached to it, and it's just going to move forward without us knowing what the actual cost will be. Thank you.
Yep, seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on this amendment to Q3. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Ms. Bauer, you can bring up the second one. I'm going to move it slightly amended. I'm going to add a coffee shop location. That staff additionally includes suitable dimensions, patio seating, and an internal configuration and services for a modest independent microbrewery and or community coffee shop location to be options for council to consider in the future. And is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Councillor Martins.
Sir, a procedural question. Is there going to be opportunity for public engagement or public input with regards to these proposed uses?
Mr.
Like, I know
Cooner?
we already had it last December. Is there any sort of follow-up once they know what we're planning?
Mr. Cooner?
Your worship.
I believe we could leave that till we get the report that's going to probably recommend this. These are being included in the design, but council has to approve the development permit for the project, and then there could be consultation on the development permit. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Worship. Currently, the zone is it is zoned currently with the scorched earth. The development permit hasn't been applied for yet, so we'd be working with the developer there to include some of these uses, and the development permit will be come forward for council's consideration. Either at that time that avenue can be explored, or now an amendment can be made to do further public consultation or refer it. However, we would be using some of the public input that was attached to the memorandum that was given to council that included some of the open house submissions.
And the BC Builds process for this is well underway, and the building permit, I believe, is underway. I'm not fully aware, but it's probably reaching that stage for that building development permit application to be made. And so these are timely, and that would come back for council to review within a report to council to consider and presumably approve some version of a development permit.
That is correct.
Great.
Yep, no, thank you very much. I just remember at the open house, one of the feedback pieces was having not enough information at the time about what to anticipate there. So I'm just wondering if people might want to provide some further input now that they have full context to the project. That was all. Thank you.
And I believe the full context of the project with any amendments adopted by council would be much more informative and valuable at the development permit stage when there's something to receive input on. So that, I'm going to call the question on the amendment to Q3. That carries unanimously. Ms. Bauer, the third one. Council recalls Fibromyalgia Wellspring Foundation used to be on this site. So I've moved an amendment here that staff additionally consider a commercial retail unit facing 272 Street for the potential return of the Fibromyalgia Wellspring Foundation thrift store in consultation with them to determine a suitable, economically feasible size and configuration if they are so interested. Is there seconded by Councillor Ferguson? Is there any discussion on this amendment? Councillor Martins.
Thank you, and I'm really happy to hear this, having visited their current site relatively recently, and they have been struggling with sales. They've been down at the location they're at currently, and I think this will put them back to where they were in the hub of the community, and I think it's a great step forward for a very good organization. So thank you for considering that.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I just want to repeat what Councillor Martins has already said. You know, they have been around both Langley City and in Aldergrove now at 2 locations, and their organization is committed to help people that have health problems, especially some sort of ailments that attack the whole body, fibromyalgia. So it's something that we can do to help them and help the community at the same time by providing thrift items, which I have been known to purchase at time to time. And I think it's a good opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Seeing no discussion. I did discuss this with them, and when they agreed to work with us to relocate, so the proposal could be significantly improved after the township acquisition of that corner location, and I think it'd be great to have them return if that can work. So with that, I'll call the question on this amendment to Q3. That carries unanimously. Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have an amendment that staff report to council regarding the options for a new, relocated, and potentially expanded Fraser Valley Regional Library location within Brookswood, Fernridge. So moved.
So why don't we do that as a subsequent motion, separate from the Alder Inn location?
Yep.
And given that we're looking at libraries, council can look at that, and I'll consider that should be a notice of motion, or maybe a member of council can move deferral if they so wish. So we'll come back to that. Is there any other amendments or discussion on Q3 as amended? Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity to say just thank you to everybody for the discussion on this. I think it's an exciting time for Aldergrove, especially if we can, once we get all of these sort of different uses into the site, go to the public with an idea of what it might look like, to hear that feedback. I know for myself, when I was proactively meeting with the Fraser Valley Regional Library folks and discussing the current library site and talking about, what's missing from it, a lot of the things were things that will be solved by potentially moving it to a location like this, higher visibility, which is great for the library, potentially expanded location, newer location. They can customize a lot of what they're actually going to be able to do with the site a little bit more than they could have in the old building. It's accessible from not only TransLink, but BC Transit, so higher usability. It's in a more central location in Aldergrove, so people on the north side of Aldergrove can actually walk or roll there. It's going to have underground parking. It's going to have street parking in the neighborhood, so I think there's a lot of pros to this potential location, and I'm really excited to see what the future of Aldergrove is going to look like with a building like this in its heart. So thank you very much.
I think you've made a great point. It's going to be, if we're located in a visible location at the corner or near to it, it would be in direct proximity to a new transit exchange between TransLink and BC Transit at 272 and the Aldergrove Town Centre. So can always say that, what we have is good enough, and I believe that that's not good enough. So with that, I'll call the question on the amended version of Q3. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. What else do we have? Councillor Ferguson, we'll go back to you. Go ahead.
Okay.
So,
Amendment?
just to read it for me one more time, please.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And are you going to be considered amendments or considered?
It's not an amendment, so we'll see if it get it on the floor as a subsequent motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would so move, Mr. Mayor, that council report to, that a staff report to council regarding the options for a new, relocated, and potentially expanded Fraser Valley Regional Library location within Brookswood, Firmridge.
Seconded by Councillor Pratt. So I think it's on the floor, Ms. Bauer. I mean, maybe we would typically see this as a notice of motion. So if any member of council wishes, I'm going to take it. Given that we're looking at a library for Aldergrove, maybe it's appropriate to consider one for Brookswood Fernridge as well in the same vein. I think this is a report to council for options, but if any member of council wishes to move deferral for one meeting, we could certainly entertain that. Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, I'd entertain deferral, but I won't move it just yet. I guess the question would be, do we have any specific location in mind for the relocation of the current Brookswood Library?
I don't think there's one right now, but as you know, we have neighborhood plans for Brookswood, Fernridge, and a number of things. And also we have commercial cores amongst other things. So I think there is ideas in the works, but not an exact location.
Great. Let's have staff weigh in on that as well. Mr. Cooner, Mr. Richardson, do we have anything prescriptive, or would this start the process for staff to look at options?
Your Worship, this would essentially start the process for staff to look at options. It's quite big enough for us to consider several locations and report back to councils and seek further directions or provide some options for council to consider. Councillor Bailey?
I think this is a great idea. A lot of the people in Brookswood are now pointing north of the highway is getting off a lot of resources and that, and they rightly or wrongly feel that south of the highway is not getting adequate resources. So I think it's a great idea to look at putting some additional resources down into the Brookswood Fernridge area.
Great. Any other discussion on the report to council? Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, living in Brookswood, I know that Brookswood definitely needs another location for their library at some point. I'm wondering how do we wait until we see a little bit more movement on development there before we decide, or I guess this is all part of the motion, I suppose. But yeah, I'm fully supportive of looking at different options for a new library in Brookswood.
Seeing none, I'm prepared to ask for the report, so we could have waited 2 weeks for that, but if there's members of council is prepared to make a decision to get this report, okay, call the question on that subsequent motion to call that Q4. That carries unanimously. Is there any other business? Councillor Kunst?
Nope.
Councillor Richter?
I have three notices of motion for the next meeting on October 21st. A debt workshop, legal opinions, and acting mayor activities. Thank you.
Great. Any other business? No. So does anybody have any items for special closed? Ms. Bauer, I have 2 legal items. And so we'll move that as amended for 2 additional legal items. Get a motion to move. Are you pushing your button or raising your hand to move into special closed? I was adding an item. You need to push your button for that. Councilor Martins, go ahead.
Thank you. Just to add a personnel item.
Okay, so anybody else wish to add anything to special closed? Great, so Ms. Bauer, do you have that? 2 legal items and a personnel item. Can I get a motion to resolve into special closed as amended, moved by Councilor Bailey, seconded by Councilor Rint. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Get a motion to terminate, moved by Councilor Bailey, seconded by Councilor Rint. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you.